As a course creator with a growing business, it's absolutely essential that you're positioning yourself as the go-to expert. And there is no better way to build that authority than writing your very own book. So stay tuned for today's episode where I interview a book coach all about how to go through that process. Welcome to the Lou Blakely Show. You're in the right place if you're a service provider who is ready to transition into a more freedom-based business model with digital products. In this podcast, I share with you a unique combination of launch strategy, energetics, and mindset to create true, long-lasting success. It's time to ditch the burnout for good, create the business that you truly want, and share it with the world. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to the Lou Blakely Show. On this episode, I have a very special guest, Christine Sheehy, and today she is on to talk all about writing a book and how it can support you and build your authority as a course creator. So welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you very much for having me, Lou. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and let us know what you do, why you do it, and all of that good stuff?
Sure. So I'm a non-fiction book coach certified by an organization called Author Accelerator, and I work with purpose-driven leaders, change makers, people that have a desire to make a difference, do something in a new way, or teach us a new way of being or doing, and help them turn that knowledge, that wisdom, those ideas into a book that can help increase their reach, make an impact, and open new doors for them. So, yeah. And why do I do it? Well, I guess I'm an author myself. I have always loved words, loved the power of books to really make a difference and spread your message. And yeah, I really love learning from my clients, because every time there's something that blows my mind that I get to experience and learn from and enjoy as part of the working process. So that collaboration of helping big ideas take shape and then take them to the world is really exciting and fun for me.
I love that. So I am guessing that when you go to networking events and that kind of thing and you tell people what you do, everyone says, oh, I'd love to write a book.
They do.
Yeah. Do you think it's something that most entrepreneurs kind of have on their bucket list?
I think it is something that's probably lurking in the background. For a lot of people, it's been an ambition for a long time, and others feel that they'd like to have a book because they can see the way that it could complement their platform or their business. So, yeah. But it's one of those things that's really easy to put off until someday, right? Because we all know there's not enough time to do all the things we want to do. So it's a question of finding the right moment and then making it happen.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think the advantages of writing a book are, and how closely aligned should it be with what what you do in your business?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a great way to get known for the thing you want to be known for. So in response to the second part of your question, I think it's really important that it's aligned with where you want to go, what you want to be known for. You don't really want to be, I don't think, writing a book about something that you used to do and it's over there, because you're going to have to spend a lot of time not only writing about the topic, but then talking about the book, marketing the book, selling the book afterwards. So you've really got to care about the thing that you're writing about. Where do we go? Oh, and then the advantages of doing it. A book helps you to share what you teach or the work that you do in a different way. We access the information in a book more through story and in a more sort of, I guess, reasoned or expansive way than you might if you were teaching it in a course. People don't want to sit through hours and hours of backstory when they're learning something through a course, but when you're reading it in a book, part of that connection with the person who's telling the story, who's sharing the information, is that story, is the gentle explanation that guides you through that idea, that helps them come to that understanding of why the work that you do matters, or in the case of courses, why they should consider actually investing in that product and that course and then going on to implement what is within it. So that's, I guess, the first big thing. And there's so many other advantages. One, that sense of connection between you and your reader, that you actually get to feel like you kind of know the person a little bit, I suppose, much in the way that you can feel that through a podcast as well, Lou. It can open the door to other opportunities. If you want to do some speaking, you can send your book along when you do your pitch. It helps to give you that sense of authority, that you are the go-to person in that niche, that you have something to say and a unique way of doing it. And it can actually, it's a great first offer as well, an easy way for people to figure out what you're all about. But it can expand that impact. If we're thinking about the impact we want to have, not everyone's going to end up buying your course. Not everyone's going to be able to necessarily afford to work with you, but you can still have impact through this book by helping that person with this part of what it is that you know.
Yeah, like a really accessible, low-cost way to kind of get a snippet of working with you. Yeah, I love that. So how do you think a course creator in particular would benefit from adding a book to their kind of like product suite?
Well, that first level offer is a really great way for to bring the book into your funnel so that somebody gets onto your list. Maybe they've got your lead magnet, and then that can be the first thing that they sell. So if they're checking you out, they kind of want to know what you're all about before they invest a large sum in working with you, or a larger sum. They want to know that you know your stuff. So it really helps them to build that trust through reading your book. And so you can work it into your sales funnel through that very early stage. But it also becomes then something that people will pass on or recommend to others, so it can start to spread the word for you about your course. And the other thing that's perhaps a little unexpected is that if you've already got this course, this material that you're teaching, the process of trying to write that into a book is different, or writing a book that complements the work that you're teaching in your course. It will cause you to think about your book your topic in a new way. So it may actually lead you to refine or elevate what you're already teaching, because you're actually coming at the material from a different perspective.
I even find that with creating courses is when I go into like my course creation cave and I start actually mapping it all out and kind of turning all of the stuff in my brain into like a logical sequence. Like it does actually improve your expertise. So I imagine writing a book is exactly the same.
Yes. You'll be testing your ideas for sure, and you'll be thinking about the reader's journey between one point and the next point and the next point, and then to the ultimate transformation, and how are you going to achieve that, and what do they need to know. And so where I have worked with people who have had existing courses, sometimes they've reordered material because they've understood, actually, I think this now comes before this, but I didn't see that until I wrote it in the course. Wrote it into the book form as opposed to the teaching materials form.
Yeah, I even find myself when I'm creating courses doing exactly that same thing, thinking, oh my God, that should actually go before that part. And I just think that's a never-ending process, almost like constant refinement, you know?
Constant refinement, yeah.
But I love what you say about a book being quite different in creating it, in terms of you need that backstory, you need to create that connection piece, because you're not necessarily doing that in a course. Like when someone logs into a course, they want the result as fast as possible in as few steps as possible. It's very logical, that kind of thing. Whereas a book, like how do you actually bring in the story to like a nonfiction book?
Well, obviously it's going to vary on your topic, but often we're teaching something that we've come to learn or come to understand through our own experience. And so that story can be a really important part of the journey, how you came to this work. And so when we first start the process of envisioning a book, one of the things I will get my clients to do is to write a letter to the reader at the beginning and then write a letter to them at the end. And sometimes, not always, that will form part of the opening and closing chapters, which is it's about where they are at the beginning and acknowledging where they are, and then acknowledging where they are at the end of that process once they've learned what it is that you have to share or experience what's in the book. And so the story, the why behind why you do the work that you do, why you created the course or why you're writing this book will come through in that process. And that will help the reader get, oh, I see why this is important. I see why this is going to make a difference, and therefore I should pay attention and learn what's in here. And then it can be little anecdotes as well. You know, I had a client, when you're explaining a particular principle, you can tell a client story or a student story about how they got this particular result from working with this exercise or this tip that you're sharing in that chapter. And those can be great ways to really cement the learning. I'm sure you use that in course materials as well, but it's different in the book. You might be able to tell it more extensively or introduce them as a character.
Yeah, and I guess there's so many different styles of books as well. Like, I personally love reading the books that include quite a lot of backstory, and you find out some like really juicy behind the scenes details about the person writing it that you'd never know if you hadn't read their books. I feel like people share stuff in books that they don't share anywhere else.
Yes, that may well be true, and then have a slight panic before publication, like, what have I done? But that old vulnerability hangover that Brené Brown talks about.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the process, right? When things go into a book, it's going to be there for a little while, so it's a more concrete sharing of the story, I guess. But there's also the idea of a connection between the reader and the author that feels maybe more personal, and so it maybe is a more natural place to share that stuff. But the stories are the way we connect. Stories are so important. They help us know we're dealing with a person, not a robot, and it's not all perfect behind the scenes. And they've learned this stuff through trial and error, through experimentation, through all the years of experience that they've had in creating this body of knowledge.
Yeah. And then I guess there's other books that are very much, I guess, more like a course, or like I was talking about before, they're very logical step by step. I find those much harder to read, but I'll probably get them out again and again as a resource, So I guess that's also another thing you need to decide is what style.
Yes, that's right. There's a whole lot that goes into the beginning process of the book. And so there's a sort of mythology around writing that you'll decide to write a book and you'll sit down and it will just flow and, the muse will strike. But it's actually not like that for the vast majority of people. The more you do in that planning stage, the easier it's going to be to then sit down and write, because you've answered all those questions. You don't go off track. You've got really clear what the reader needs to learn at each stage and what the anecdotes are that you might share, how far you want to go. So it really is important to get that clear at the beginning. Some people do like that very linear, almost textbook kind of approach, and that can be really useful if you're trying to teach something. One of my clients had built her first website in 3 languages from a how to build a website book. Now, she probably didn't need a lot of backstory in the how to build a website, maybe just some examples of how it had worked out. How it had worked for different people, and a little bit as to how the book came to be. But these days, you should go online and buy a course for that. That was before there were too many websites on the internet.
All right, yeah. So at what stage of business do you recommend to someone, especially if they're like a course creator or a coach or wanting to build their expertise and authority, at what stage of business do you recommend actually adding a book in?
So as a course creator, I would say a good time to do it is when you have had the course for a little while. So you've tested the concept, you know that it's working, you know that people are getting the results that you've promised, you've fiddled around a little bit with the flow so that you've got it actually the way that you think is most effective. And then when you're ready to step up to that next level, maybe you want to start doing bigger speaking gigs, or you want to start teaching workshops on a bigger scale, you want to get your name known more widely and have the book to start spreading the word for you, that's a really good time. I have seen it done where someone was transitioning from one-on-one work or done for you work to actually wanting to teach people through an online platform how to do it themselves. That was in an events planning kind of a scenario, and that worked quite well for her because she was then selling the guide to doing it, and that led into teaching at scale how to do those things for themselves. But it can be, you need to be quite anchored in the expertise that you're sharing, I think. Otherwise it's going to be a hard process of figuring that out as you go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because a course is quite easy to improve and change, but once a book's written and out there, you actually can't change it, right?
You can't change it. You can do book 2, you can do the second edition, you can do those things, and it is a moment in time that the book is published. But yeah, you would like it ideally to have some longevity so that you can continue to sell for a good few years. One of my clients has just put out her second book, and she's found the first one selling again as the second book comes up and is on pre-release. People are going back and buying the first one again. And she still gets, so she's a coach and she still gets people coming to her now 3 years after the first book to say, I'm working with you because I read your book. And I read it maybe 18 months, 2 years ago, but we have the slow burn, people have got to get to know you and then be ready to do the work. And so in the meantime, that book has done the warming up of this is what she's all about. This is the way she works. This is how she teaches. And so that person really is primed as a customer by the time she comes to sign up, because she's already so she understands the method so well by the time they start working together.
Yeah, I guess there's a whole different layer of knowing someone, the way they work, their method, all of that stuff. So there's just, I guess it's a really big trust builder, right?
Really big trust builder.
Yeah, I love that. And no doubt there's no end of opportunities that come from writing a book, especially when, like, the book launch process is massive, right? I don't know if do you work in that, or are you more on the writing side?
I'm more on the writing side. There are people that specialize purely in launching the book, but I'm sure the principals would some of them from launching courses as well. There'd be some connections there. But absolutely, the book's not going to market itself. So it's not just the writing of the book. It's being prepared to put that time and effort in, putting the thought and planning into your launch process and really making the most out of it, because it can be quite a big splash moment. You can make a bit of a stir, but you've got to make the most of that opportunity. But one thing you can do is actually, and I recommend all my clients do, is to be marketing the book as you're writing the book. And you can even some of your posts can be little snippets that you're writing for different chapters, can turn into social media posts, blogs, and so on, and end up in the book later on. And that can be just getting your audience warmed up. The book is coming, involving them along the way. It's a really important part of the process.
Yeah, someone who I saw doing a really good job, interesting take on that, is Amanda Francis when she was writing her book. I don't know if you saw what she did, but she started a book club with her customers, and
yes,
you had to pay for it. It was like quite cheap. I wasn't in there, but like every chapter, as she wrote each chapter, she would have dates set that it had to be out, and she would drop it to them, which was quite cool, I thought. So they got to read the chapter, and I guess that was before it was even edited. So hypothetically, if she was getting feedback around, she could actually change it before she published it.
Yeah, and they feel like VIPs, right? Because they have got this behind-the-scenes intro into what you're doing, what you're working on in real time. And so that's pretty cool. If you've got that audience of people who really are big fans, for lack of a better word, then that can be a really great way to bring them closer. In fact, right now, actually, there's a woman called Rachel Macy Stafford in the United States. She writes about parenting, wholehearted parenting, effectively. And she's running a launch team. So she's got people who have bought the book effectively on pre-sale, but got an early access copy. And then she's given them dates to work through the material, and then have put feedback in a little private Facebook group. And then, and she has people who are very who adore her, and so they're then creating little posts and sending them out and getting other people spreading the word about the book before it even comes out. So that can be really effective if you've got a loving audience or a close audience that really wants to be part of your process and laps it up. And
has she written multiple books?
Yes, she has.
I think that's the thing. Like, once you start writing a book, you start with one. It's kind of like a course, I guess. Like, maybe your audience is a bit smaller, but the more you do it, the bigger that kind of reception is going to be.
Yeah, so it's all about growing your audience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you have people that if the book has made an impact, if people enjoyed it, and you're going to evolve as a business owner and move on to the next level. And so it is quite natural for the next book idea to come, right? This is now what we're doing at this level. So, yeah. And then if people, certainly with my client, the coach, the people that read the first book are buying the second book. So.
Yeah, I think it's such a great, like, a book is such a great kind of top of funnel activity. And also, like, that book launch, like I'm always saying to my course clients, your launch is going to bring you, like, doing a live launch is going to bring you so much more attention than just if you were just randomly cruising along with your everyday marketing. And the side effects of that is you get asked to be a speaker, like, you just... You just step into your expertise so much more by kind of claiming, I know this stuff and I'm willing to put it out there. It's kind of like you're stamping your mark. And I think a book is like just taking that to the next level. Like, there must be so many good side effects or good things that come out of that launching process, including selling more courses, but other things too.
Well, yes, and even for yourself, that claiming of your space, as you put it, of being the go-to person in your niche is a really powerful. It is a power move, right? And it's a powerful step for you to actually go, yes, I do know this. I have created something, and I want to share it in a book, and then actually start to pitch yourself for media interviews, get on the radio, maybe even get on the TV, get on to podcasts, get guest articles in online publications and magazines and newspapers. All of that is possible.
So if you're thinking about writing a book, what would you as a book coach recommend as the best kind of process for going about that?
Okay, so the first important step is to get really clear on why you're doing it. So what's your strategy? What do you want out of it? Where do you hope that the book will take you? And then why does the book matter for the reader? If you can get clear on those two things, why it matters for you, and then why it matters to the reader, that gives you a whole lot of power in terms of actually committing to the project and then seeing it through. Because it's very easy if you're starting, I'm going to write a book, and then just to sort of, get the wobbles partway through and not finish the project. So really committing to that why for you and the why for the reader is a really important step. Then, as I said before, the envisioning of the book is really important. So do not rush through and try and start writing it. Get really clear on what's this transformation that you want your reader to experience in the book, and how do you get them there? Where do they start? Where do they end? And what happens in between? And that can help you plot out the steps or the chapters that are going to be in your book. It's to help you to start thinking about that structure. I'd also, as you mentioned earlier, talk about or look at whether it's going to be very sort of functional, or whether you want to include more story, more anecdotes, and what that might look like. So how much of you is going to be in this book, and how much is it more of a how-to book? So that's the first step. Once you have got that vision really clear, you've got your plan, you know what the book's about, who it's for, why it matters, and what's in it, then you can start to commit to a writing process. And you've really just got to find what works for you, whether it's taking a weekend every month where you just go away and write, or whether you do half an hour in the morning. I don't think there's any real set, and nothing that works for everybody. No one size fits all. So you just find the writing time and commit to it, block it out, put it in there, set yourself some goals, whether it's number of words, just get your hands on the keyboard and get the writing done. And while you're doing that, you can start that marketing. You can start sharing some posts. You can start writing blogs. You'll find a lot of ideas will come to you for content while you're actually in the process of planning and then writing your book. And then the third stage is going to be the polishing of it, getting it right, making sure that the manuscript is in good shape and so on, and thinking about your publishing.
Yeah. So do you recommend that everyone has an editor?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, the publishing decision is probably one actually that you would make a little bit earlier when you're thinking about the book, is which way you want to go. Are you going to try and pitch it to a traditional publisher, or are you going to self-publish? And there are pros and cons to both of those, particularly for somebody who's a course creator or has their own business. Obviously, there is some prestige that comes with getting a book published by a traditional publishing house, getting a book deal, and so on. You have to think about your book as a product in that instance that you are pitching, you're selling to a publisher, and they're going to invest in that product. And then, so they need to know that it works as a business case. So when you are trying to get a book deal, you're effectively making a business case that this is why they should buy this book, why it matters in the marketplace, who it's for, there is an audience, and why you're the person to be the one to write that book. If you're going to self-publish, there's obviously cost involved, but it can be quite a bit quicker.
Right.
Because you have control over that process. So if you want to do it intensely, you can do it intensely. But if you're going to self-publish, it's really important to invest in the support that you need to get it properly edited, proofread, good book design, actually do it really well. And that can be a really good option for somebody who is a course creator or a business owner.
Yeah, I have questions about this.
Oh, sorry, I'm racing too fast.
So I'm just really curious about this, because you see people doing both. With something I've wondered is, if you get a book deal, do you always get an advance before you start writing?
I'm not sure I can answer the question always. Often.
Yeah.
But it is an advance in the sense that you will need to make that back in book sales. So you would not see any royalties until
Okay.
you've earned the advance. It's an advance payment. So it's really like a deposit on the book sales.
I feel like for the self-publishing way, like it is appealing, but you'd really have to make sure that your marketing and your launch strategy and getting that, maybe a PR expert or something to help you with the launch and all of that kind of stuff would be vital. But once that work's done, then you get like full reward for it, right? Whereas with a book deal, I'd imagine the publisher takes a decent cut of each book sold.
You would get a percentage of the royalties or the sales, the net sales of the book, yes.
Yeah.
So the way to approach a book is really to look at it in what it's going to do for your business or your brand, your impact overall. The book sales are never really, or should never really be, the driving force in terms of how much revenue you're going to make out of a book, because how long's a piece of string? That's something that's very hard to quantify. And a small percentage of people who write books make really amazing money out of books, right? So it's more, what can it lead to you? How's it going to bring you more clients? How's it going to help you sell your course? How's it going to help you get bigger opportunities that are going to increase your revenue? That's the way to look at the book. So it's something you invest in as a tool to grow your impact. So yes, you will make more money from more of the book sales from a self-published book, but you have to invest all the money up front to do it well. And then yes, all the marketing is on you. Having said that, even with a traditional publisher, you are a massive part of the marketing of that book, and you will be doing a lot as well. It's not a question of hand it over and they do it all for you. What you bring to the table is a huge part of that equation in terms of book sales. And that's partly what makes you attractive to a publisher as well in this sort of entrepreneurial space, is actually what is their platform and how much reach do they have, and how much can we expect that we will sell of this book if we're going to invest in it.
Yeah, which I guess goes to say, if you've already got a course, you're already well known, you're pretty active with your marketing and have a big following, then you're probably much more likely to be able to get those book deals.
It's one factor.
Okay.
It's one factor. But a big part of it is going to be, what is your topic? Where's the market for that topic right now? Is it something that the publisher can see a gap for? What else is out there on that topic? Where does this fit within that space? And then how is this person going to be able to sell it for us, or for themselves? So all of those things are factors. So when you pitch to a publisher, you would prepare that proposal, like that case. And that can be an amazing exercise to go through, actually, because even if you're going to self-publish, you've then created your own business case for this book. So you've looked at what else is out there. You've done your research on who's buying books on this topic, what they want to know about. So you're making sure that your book aligns with what people are looking for. So it's helpful on both sides.
Yeah. And do they when you get a book deal, do they invest? Obviously, they're invested in the sales of your book. So do they pay for marketing ongoing of the book? Look, or not really?
Every book publisher would have their own arrangements, and I couldn't say as a
so it's like a contract.
Thing. It's like a contract, and they'll usually, in most cases, I would expect there'll be some marketing support, but it's probably not going to be, unless you're a big name and it's a book that's going to sell for a long time, then it will be for a period of time. And then they'll be wanting to see how your book is performing. Yeah. Because it's a business, right? So they've got a lot of it's like they're marketing a whole lot of little products, and which one are they going to put the most energy into, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's interesting what you say about, the money that you can expect to make off a book. It's not really about that. It's more about bringing people into your world, like visibility. I know that in the online course world, there's lots of courses below $50, and I'm always trying to reiterate to people, you're not going to make money from those courses. They are simply like a visibility play in a way. Bring people into your world, and a book is exactly the same, and it's kind of that same price point too.
It is, yeah. I think, and it's also it's a labor of love. You're going to put a lot of energy and time into preparing this book, writing this book, marketing this book. And so if you look at it on a strict time per hour ROI, it's not going to stack up in most cases, because it is a lot, but it's what else it brings you. Like with my coaching client, the people that come to her going, I'm here because I read your book. And if you are speaking, if you are doing live workshops, it's something you can have on hand to sell every time you do a workshop, and that will cover your basic costs of the room or in an ideal world, you make a little bit of money extra to the book, to the speaking gig itself. So if you've got that kind of platform where you are in front of groups of people, actually, yeah, it can be quite a good little revenue generator month on month. Because I don't know if you buy books when you're in the room, but I quite often do. Yeah. And the Writers' Festival is the worst. I go to see these authors speak and come away with bags and bags of books that I might not have bought had I not heard them and connected with them. So,
yeah, definitely. I love that. I think there's so many actually similarities between courses and books. Like, it's just actually insane how many there are. They're quite similar in a lot of ways. They can do the same things, like, you know, how you said it's not an immediate ROI type thing. It's like, same with courses. Like, if you're looking at it for time that you're spending on creating the course and you're expecting that ROI in that first launch, it's not going to happen.
No.
It's like a 1 to 2 year plan.
Yeah.
And I guess it's exactly the same with the book, right?
Yeah, but over time. And that's why it's so important that it's a topic that you really actually care about and you want to be known for, because it's the slow burn. It's going to, maybe you'll make a big splash right away, right? But you'd never want to bet your house on that. It's like actually using the book to build momentum, to get your name out there, to create that wider impact, and then just keep people talking about you, keep people sharing, hey, you should read this. It's great.
That makes me think of that Untamed book by Glennon Doyle. Like, I'd never heard of her before that book. And then that book just blew up. And then as I was reading it, she kept talking about her last 10 years of writing books. It's just funny how that one book, I don't know, well, I'd never heard of her. It just kind of exploded her whole presence.
Yeah. She was quite well known before, well before that book, when she started, I think, a blog called Momastery. I don't know, early 2000s maybe. But yeah, that one seemed to just take her to the next level. She's a very raw, open writer, right? It's all out there. And I think she just touches on things that other people wouldn't go there, which is connected with people in a really powerful way.
Yeah. What does she actually do? Well, she's just an author, right? Not just an author, but that's her thing.
Author, podcaster, speaker, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So,
activist, I think she says too.
Activist, yeah. So, if someone has decided they want to write a book, what's the very first step? And what kind of help do they need to surround themselves with?
The very first step is that topic. And what we're trying to do is to be able to articulate it in a way that if you're at a cocktail party and I say, Lou, what's your book about? And you can give me the 2-second answer, and I immediately think, oh my gosh, I need to read that, or my sister needs to read that. I've got in mind somebody who wants that book. So getting really, really clear on that topic is just so crucial. And so practicing that, what's my book about, in 2 sentences is a really important exercise to do at the beginning, being able to say it powerfully. Because we just start out going, oh, it's kind of this, and it's a bit of a workbook, but it's also kind of a journal, and then it's got my backstory, and nobody is really listening. But if you can say it in 2 sentences, that's a really powerful exercise. Well, obviously, I'm going to say a book coach. But that even if you are comfortable writing by yourself, that envisaging process, working through that with somebody else who can help you to really get clear on that idea and plan it and make that robust case for the book, can help set you in the right direction where you can then go and write the manuscript yourself if you feel comfortable doing that. You can also have a coach to help you give you feedback along the way and for accountability. And then beyond that, you need to think about an editor, a separate person who's an editor, then the book coach, someone who's got fresh eyes on the manuscript, a proofreader, cover designer, and then if you're self-publishing. This is all for self-publishing, of course, right? If you're going to be going down the publishing track, if you want to pitch your book, then I would recommend a coach for that envisaging process, but then also for preparing the book proposal, because a book proposal is a meaty piece of work. It's the business case. So there's quite a lot to be done. And you making it easy for the publisher to say yes if you give them the information that they are looking for.
So what if you're a person that really doesn't like to write, but you really want to have a book out there? What do you recommend? Getting a ghostwriter if that's you, or what are the options?
You can get a ghostwriter, absolutely. I'm working with someone at the moment where she's got a body of work of blogs and things over the years, and we'll be looking at creating her book concept, mapping out what the steps are, and then looking at, hey, what content do you have? What do we need? What other pieces do we need to write to fill this in? And then how can we actually work that through into a book? It's not maybe as streamlined or as easy as you might think to do that. Weaving a whole lot of blogs together is actually a bit of an art in terms of making it feel like one cohesive piece of work, but it can be done. So there are people that can help with that. I do ghostwrite from time to time, not very often because there's only so many projects like that you can take on at any one time. But if that is you, yes, there are people that can take that body of work and make it into a book. And I should probably touch on AI because it's of the moment, right?
Yeah.
And, it's interesting to see where that is going to lead. I haven't experimented with it too much yet, just starting to play. I think that it can be, if you really don't like to write, it can be a useful tool for getting you started. It's never going to take away that art of the writer. It's never going to be the end product, I don't think, just throwing some ideas into an AI tool, but it can help you actually get the bones of it out, and then you can play with it, finesse it, and start to actually work that through. You'd always, I think, want to also check that you weren't, that there was no plagiarism. You need to run it through a plagiarism tool. These things are so new that they are a little bit risky, and it's not something I recommend, but if it's hard for you to get started, it can be a useful getting started tool.
Yeah, I think that I agree actually with AI so far for using it just for content. Like, it is a good idea generator, but what it is throwing out is very generic as well. And it's like, well, how do you separate yourself from the next person? I imagine in a book, it's never going to be able to really tell your story like you can.
It's never going to be able to tell your story. No way. It might help you structure your ideas, I think. I'm going to say that. I don't actually, in terms of no way to tell your story, I can't envisage a time when it would.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know, the calculator hasn't taken away you need to do maths, right? Like it helps. It's a tool, but it doesn't actually, somebody's still got to come up with my maths is maybe not a great analogy for me to explain, but there's somebody doing the magic and it's just a tool. So I certainly wouldn't recommend doing a book that way, but that might help you break the backs of some structural things. How do I structure these ideas? That kind of thing.
Also, I think there's an alignment piece in there. Like, I personally wouldn't want to put out a book that was written by a AI machine. You know what I mean?
No. And I don't think I wouldn't want to feel like I'm reading one.
Yeah.
That's written by an AI machine.
It will be interesting to see how much they get to know our own personal voice and story, but I guess that's a topic for another episode, really.
It'd be very interesting to see how far they can go. But I think, like everything, it seems like it's going to take over certain things, and when you actually put it into practice, there are limits to the magic that it can do, and the art and the creativity and the magic of the writing and the writer's voice will always be able to trump something that's just turned out. So
So I'm curious, like when I think of writing a book, I definitely feel like I've got a book in me, right? And I kind of have an idea of what I would like a book to be about, but it's like that massive project. Like, obviously you've got to decide you're doing it, commit to it, do all that pre-planning, decide if you're going to try and get a deal or whatever, and then it's the writing part. And I think for me that seems like the biggest barrier in a way, is actually finding that rhythm with writing. So if you're like me and you're thinking, what's the best way to actually get this book done? Have you seen any patterns, or, from your work observing people writing books, have you noticed the people that really can churn it out really fast and get it done? What's their method? And kind of like, where do you see the people that are getting it done really quickly? What are they doing?
It's blocked out time for sure, like just dedicating, whether it's one day a week or they're actually committing a chunk of time to actually write, and they're not allowing anything to interfere with it, because it is always the thing that could slide. There's no client waiting, Deadlines, even artificial ones, can be really helpful. Having some sort of accountability buddy or some kind of reward system where you're like, okay, I'll get to do this once that is hit. word counts. So I'm going to write, even just because I love to write, and I can sit down and I do not want to do it today. And I want to check everything else and just order that thing for my child and book that bus ticket and whatever. And
anything but the work.
Anything but the work. And, I'm talking with a publisher about a book at the moment, and I really want this book to happen. And I've had time carved out, and I sit down and I do everything but. And so, yeah, putting in place some of those just blockers that make it impossible for you to access the internet. I went to a cafe the other day and she said, "Do you want our Wi-Fi code?" No, I do not want your Wi-Fi code. I definitely do not. I'm here because I don't want it. But just saying, I'm just going to sit here till I write. And you can make it quite achievable, like 200 words. And when you hit 200 words, often you're then partway through something. So you'll actually get to 500. So if you make it a non-negotiable, I can't do anything else till I've hit a small achievable number, and then you'll often continue on and get more done, and just chipping away like that. I would also say ending on the next idea. So finish your session with the next idea dropped down, or the first sentence dropped down, so that when you come back, you're not like, oh, where was I? You've actually got, oh, yes. That's where it was. And even looking at that before you go for your walk in the morning or do your weights workout or whatever it is that you're doing exercise or movement wise can just help it to start percolating while you're in motion and movement. And then you come back and the idea comes down.
I love that. And that kind of like opening the next loop as well was quite a good segue between chapters, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah. And it just helps you feel like there's momentum there. There's a flow and you know what's next.
And I think for me, I quite enjoy reading books like that because then you pulled into the next chapter.
Indeed.
Good.
Like the Netflix.
Yeah, totally.
The Netflix of books. Yes, here's your next episode.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, I've heard of some people like locking themselves away in a resort in Fiji to smash out a book in a week type thing. I guess it's just what works for your personality, right?
That can be useful. I mean, when my kids were young, I used to have a friend, well, I still have a friend, but we used to go and we would book out a hotel room, often a horrible looking hotel room in the city somewhere. We didn't really feel like we were wanting to be out in the city, and we would just go for it and just try and get through writing in that weekend, because that was the time available to us at that point. We didn't have time with small babies to be able to write. So that is definitely another strategy, and then you can be focused on it. But you've got to make it as focused. I don't know if Fiji would work for me, to be honest.
I'd be by the pool drinking margaritas or something.
Yeah. The other thing I think is a trap is this: I will write a book one day when I've got time, and I have seen that. Once I was, when I was in an expat scenario, there were a whole bunch of us that were living in this town overseas for a year, and there was one girl who had decided she would use that year to write the book. She did everything but because it was like this big, almost like an oppressive expanse of time that she had to fill. And she told everyone she was going to write the book, and then so everyone's, how's the book going? How's the book going? And actually, it doesn't really. Just the time isn't going to make the book happen. It's actually you prioritizing it, making the most of what the little windows that you can squeeze out to get it done around normal life. I think very few people actually ever end up in that situation where they can take a year or 6 months and just focus on the book alone in a cabin in the woods with a chunky sweater and, some candles and, I don't know, a hot man, but I don't know, chopping wood outside, I don't know, a beer, whatever is in the movies. It isn't true. It isn't real, and it doesn't make your book happen any faster.
Oh my God.
You just have to do it.
Yeah, that actually reminds me, I worked with a guy once who was writing a book and with my NLP mindset coaching, which is kind of separate from my launching stuff, but he said that everywhere he went, he was getting asked, how's your book going? How's your book going? It's become like a real shameful thing for him. So just having that accountability, I think by the time we had finished, he'd pretty much written the whole book. So even though that wasn't even a focus, but I think, I don't know, for me, I'd need accountability. And I guess that's one of the reasons why people hire you, right?
Yes. Yeah, or become part of writing groups is another way to do that. Just to actually have that commitment to, I'm going to write this many pages and then checking in, I've actually done it. And if you haven't, why haven't you? And yeah, there's excuses. And life happens. There are times when things get in the way. But, I could let my kids get in the way every week if I wanted to. So it's about actually making that commitment. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think for me, I would want it done pretty fast because I don't like things hanging over me. And I know with creating courses, I need people waiting for the next module. Like, otherwise I'll never do it. So,
Right.
yeah, I need to actually put myself in quite a stressful situation. And I almost thrive off that in a way. Whereas if I'm like, I'll do it like little bit by little bit, it just wouldn't vibe with me.
Mm. And there's some sort of pressure, I think, of coming up against a deadline that can help to really force ideas onto the page. And that's a lot of writers, a lot of journalists work that way, hard up against the deadline. So
High pressure.
It's not ideal, but just keeping that little constant milestones can really help you just get through it. And there's always going to be periods that are intense of working on it, like any large project.
Yeah. I think
just
so,
have to dig
like
in.
we are so anti-hustle these days that I feel like we've forgotten that sometimes you've just got to do the work, right? And you've just got to get it done. It's not going to feel good, but you've just got to do it.
And it can be hard in the middle of a project, I think.
Yeah.
It can be easy to lose faith in it. And that's where an accountability partner or a coach can really just help keep you on track. Remind you of your why, have that why on your notice board or above your laptop, and just keep coming back to it. And if you are in that situation where you've got a good group of raving fans as such that can be part of that team and supporting you as you go, that can be a really great way as well, because they're waiting for it. They want that next chapter. So,
yeah, I love that. So is there anything else that a course creator needs to know about writing a book that you want to share?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think it's just thinking about where you want to go and the impact that you want to have, and thinking beyond maybe this year's sales or next year's sales, but actually, do I want to be known as a go-to person? And then if you do, have a think about going for it.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, one thing that you and I spoke about prior to this episode was what content should be in the book versus what content should be in the course. And I think that's just before we end this interview. I think that's a really important thing to discuss, because I feel like I personally have my view on this, which is it should totally be at the top of the funnel for people to get to know you, get to know what you do, maybe teach something prior to what they need to know in your course. But I don't think a book should replace what's in your course, because they should be two different products. So using the book to bring people into your world, to build authority, and then the next obvious best step for that person who's read the book is to do your course. So they're not replacing each other. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And a good way to think of it is, what do you wish they knew before they came to your course? So what would be really helpful for them? And often that's the why behind why this course matters, why they need to learn this thing. So actually helping them to really understand, oh, if I do that, then I'll be able to do all these things. So I agree with you that I don't think it's really helpful for the book to mirror the course exactly, because then you can get into that scenario of, oh, I buy the course. But if you can get to the why behind the course, and you can give them a few light bulb moments. So you might teach a few of the exercises that are in the book, and you help them get that, oh, wow, this is really useful. Then they become primed and ready to buy the course at the moment that it's that it's the right time for them.
And I think sometimes you can even share your method or whatever it is, but not necessarily share the step-by-step.
Exactly. And actually, I had a client yesterday mention the book, which I haven't read, but I know the gist of it, which is Profit First.
Oh, yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, right. So that's a book where he essentially explains, as I understand it, he explains the system, right? Or the methodology of Profit First. So you could read that book and loosely apply the principles and get some benefit from applying the principles. But you're going to get a whole lot more if you go and then work with a Profit First certified consultant who's going to take things to another level, right? Who's going to actually get into your business and implement that. So in that sense, that's a book that could have an impact, but there's a whole lot of other deeper knowledge and understanding that you can then go and invest in if you choose to.
Yeah. I feel like that is a book that I would say is way more actionable than most books I've read. Like, I have fully integrated Profit First into my business and have done so ever since I read that book, and I've never had any further help with it.
Interesting.
because it is so comprehensive and it really does teach you all of it.
Mm.
But when I've gone and talked to accountants and I'm like, are you familiar with Profit First? They're not. Most of them aren't. So I've had to just go, well, whatever, this is what I'm doing and this is how it works, and just do my books, please. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it would be an advantage to go and work with a Profit First certified accountant for sure, but I've never experienced it. I've never felt the need.
Yeah, right. And I don't particularly know the business model of the man who wrote that book, but if his methodology is not actually selling courses to you, it's actually training accountants, then
yeah, I don't know. He's got a lot of other books. Like,
right.
I can't remember. He's got another book that came out maybe during COVID, and it's got quite a comprehensive course behind it. I almost think that's taken over from Profit First. Like, Profit First is when he got famous.
Right.
And now he's kind of extended his business model. He's a real smart guy.
Maybe that's not the best example.
Yeah.
The other one I was thinking about was, this one was big a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, I've got that, but I've never read it.
Yeah. I've read some of it, but a long time ago. But this came out with a big splash as part of his funnel for the launch method. And then he had a whole program that went along with it that didn't seem to harm sales of that. So anyway.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said with, and I guess this is why people hire people like me and you, right? There's something to be said for having support, accountability, and actually feedback as well.
And and someone's eyes on your business, your product, your book. You know, having that interaction, the synergy of ideas is huge. So you can get so much from a book, but you can't get all of it. And here's another example. Have I got it here?
I love how you've got your books just behind you, ready to go.
It's something I prepared earlier. I actually don't know if I've got this one here, but I trained in book coaching with an organization called Author Accelerator, and one of the tools that they use is a blueprint for a book, and something that you learn when you do the coach training. And the woman who created that course has written a book called The Blueprint for a Book, and it's useful, but it doesn't give all the rest of the learning and the understanding. So I could have taken that and tried to teach it, but it's not in any way going to empower me to coach the way that I do now from all the other knowledge that went into it. But it helped me see the method and go, this is really interesting. I want to know more.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you're going for.
To all under expertise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the moral of the story is it's really up to you. Like, find what works for you, right?
Find what works for you. Yeah. And you know, sometimes if you're elevating to that next level of your business, if you've taught course A and the next thing is going to be course B, then you might be reasonably generous in what you share in course A, but it's about course A, but it's leading towards this idea of course B, right? So it all depends on your stage and where you're thinking. Some courses end up being, they were the prime thing, and then they become a secondary thing. So yeah, all about where you're at in your business.
Yeah. Oh, well, I've loved having you on, Christine. I feel like I have learned quite a lot as well. So hopefully those listening feel the same. And, you know, if you're out there and you're listening to this episode and you're thinking of writing a book and you want Christine's help, Christine, where can we find you?
You can find me at bookcoach.co.nz. Thank you so much for having me, Lou.
Yeah, it's been amazing to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yay. Thank you. I've loved it too.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks, course creators and go-getters. You're incredible, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe in your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to find out more about what I offer, head across to loublakely.com. See you next time.